Hi, this is William Zabel, and this video is entitled GAO Warning to Congress, Fiscal Path Unsustainable Without Policy Changes. In this video, we will examine what the GAO found in their audit of the U.S. government finances. For some time, the U.S. government, the American public, and financial analysts have known that the spending habits of the U.S. government will lead to financial problems in the near future. Yet the spending continues unabated. Here's what the GAO, General Accounting Office, found. In 2019, the federal deficit increased to $984 billion, up from $779 billion in 2018. Federal receipts increased by $134 million, but that was offset by a $339 billion increase in spending. This rise in spending is due to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, defense, and interest on the debt. Issue. Debt held by the public increased from $15.8 trillion, 77% of GDP at the end of 2018, to $16.8 trillion, or 79% of GDP at the end of 2019. The alarming prediction by the GAO is that healthcare costs are expected to grow faster than GDP and will be the primary drivers of federal spending in the future. Even more alarming is that the net interest is expected to exceed Medicare, Social Security, and discretionary spending going into 2049. Major programs projected to face physical challenges in the future. By 2025, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation Trust Fund will be depleted. Premiums are not enough to pay benefits. By 2026, Medicare Hospital Insurance Trust Fund will be depleted. Revenues at that time only sufficient to pay 89% of hospital-related Medicare spending. By 2034, Social Security Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund depleted. Revenues only sufficient to pay 77% at scheduled benefits. Also alarming is that the year 2034 is when the GAO projects that public debt surpasses 106% of GDP. The situation is dire, and the GAO states that the U.S. government has not fully accounted for these physical risks. The GAO has identified 4 areas that need to be addressed to help mitigate the physical problems. They don't eliminate the problems, but addressing them would go a long way to helping bring America's physical health in order. They are: 1. Address improper payments. Since 2003, improper payments have totaled almost $1.7 trillion. 2. Narrow persistent tax gap. Reduce the gap between taxes owed and those paid. The average net tax gap is estimated to be $381 billion. 3. Ensure that the government programs are fully auditable. This would ensure that money is being spent properly. 4. Address duplication, overlap, and fragmentation. GAO concludes that by eliminating duplicated, fragmented, or payments that overlap, a cost savings of $262 billion has been realized since 2010 due to the actions by Congress and executive branch agencies. The big spenders in the U.S. government. 1. Department of Defense reported the largest increase in spending of $210 billion. 2. Health and Human Services and the Social Security Administration with a cost increase of $79.8 billion and $62.6 billion respectively. 3. The Department of Education had a cost increase of $74.2 billion. 4. Department of Veterans Affairs, cost increase of $70.7 billion. Number 5. Net interest costs related to the national debt increased by $46.3 billion. These increases are due to a variety of reasons, but waste, fraud, overpayments, duplicate payments, and payments to those not eligible to receive them probably account for a portion of the increases. Also shown in this report is total liabilities of $26.9 trillion at the end of fiscal year 2019. This amount is up from $25.4 trillion at the end of fiscal year 2018. The increase is broken down as follows. 1. Most of the increase is due to $1.0 trillion in federal debt held by the public and accrued interest. 2. Largest components of total liabilities were $16.9 trillion in federal debt securities held by the public and accrued interest. The other portion of that $25.4 trillion is benefits payable to federal employees and veterans. The breakdown is as follows. 1. $8.4 trillion in federal employee and veterans benefits payable. This can be further broken down as follows. 2. $2.6 trillion in civilian benefits. 3. $5.8 trillion in military and veterans benefits. What federal experts are saying. Fiscal year 2021 President's Budget Proposal. High and rising debt will have serious negative consequences for the budget and the nation. Congressional Budget Office. High debt and large deficits might also create constraints for policymakers as they contemplate making changes to fiscal policy. Jerome H. Powell, Chairman of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. Quote, over time, this outlook could restrain fiscal policymakers' willingness or ability to support economic activity during a downturn. I remain concerned that high and rising federal debt can, and in the longer term, restrain private investment and thereby reduce productivity and overall economic growth. Unquote. As you can see, it's not just the GAO that is concerned about the fiscal health of the U.S. government. According to the 2019 Long-Term Budget Outlook, Treasury market participants raised similar concerns about government spending and fiscal health of the U.S. government. Also, according to the GAO, in the long term, most of the increase in federal spending as a share of GDP is being driven by spending on federal health care programs and net interest. This chart on the next page shows a percentage of gross domestic product. In a GAO simulation, healthcare and interest payments will continue to increase. Projected spending is projected to increase from 5.4% of GDP in fiscal year 2019 to 8.5% of GDP in fiscal year 2049. The GAO also found that both public and private spending continues to grow faster than the economy. Net interest. The GAO found that spending on the national debt interest over the long term will make the largest category of spending. This according to their simulations. As a share of GDP, net interest is expected to surpass 1. Non-defense discretionary spending in 2030, 2. Defense discretionary spending in 2033, 3. Medicare spending in 2044, and 4. Social Security spending in 2044. 5. Total discretionary spending in 2049. Below is a chart that shows a breakdown of this spending. Borrowed money for what? Shockingly, the report adds that the federal government is already borrowing money to finance not only the deficit, but the interest the government has to pay on the debt. This interest spending is broken down into two components, growing debt and growth in interest rates. Growing debt is caused by borrowed money to finance a deficit and make interest payments. This is obviously adding to the debt. Social Security poses significant financial challenges. There are two factors that are stressing the Social Security system. 1, an aging population. 2, a slow labor force growth. The Social Security Fund has for decades taken in more revenue than it spends on recipients. Starting in 2005, this situation changed and now revenues do not meet spending obligations. Address the tax gap. Another area of concern is a gap between paid taxes and taxes owed. The IRS average tax gap for years 2011 through 2013. The IRS states that the taxpayers owed an estimated $2.7 trillion in taxes a year for years 2011 through 2013. These taxes can be broken down into individual income taxes, corporate income taxes, employment taxes. Of the $2.7 trillion owed, only $2.2 trillion was actually paid, leaving a $441 billion a year unpaid tax. This is called the tax gap. As you can see, there are many areas within the federal budget that need to be addressed, but the biggest issue itself is spending beyond what the U.S. government takes in, is what got us into this mess to begin with.